The Seattle Mariners hit the All-Star break as the top team in the AL West with a 52-46 record and a one-game lead over the Astros for the division. But they've looked nowhere close to a playoff team recently. Just 1 month ago, the Mariners were 44-31 and had a 10-game lead on the division after they beat Cleveland on June 18th. But after that, they went 8-15 until the break, and their first series back was against Houston with a chance to extend their lead, and Seattle whiffed on this opportunity.
Ironic.
They lost the series and sole possession of first place, and plain and simple, the Mariners are falling apart right now. But this isn't because of anything that's happened recently or just some bad luck. This is because the massive problem with this team is finally biting them in the ass. Now, I've been putting off doing this video for a while now, because one, I don't want to just talk about the same teams over and over, especially my favorite team, because everybody wants a chance to hear about their favorite team. And I already did the video talking about Julio's struggles earlier this year. And the second reason was that I kept thinking there was no way that things would keep looking this bad. It just had to turn around at some point, right? Right? Well, apparently not, so here we go. Now, what I'm talking about is the Mariners' offense and how much it's been killing any hope this team has of finally turning the corner into a legit contender, because it's become painfully obvious how big of a problem this is and how much it's holding this team back. But you can't just complain about how bad they've been hitting this year. And trust me, we'll get there, because it's been horrible. But this isn't just a freak thing this year. This problem goes back years and way deeper than just the roster in 2024. Jerry Dipoto was hired as the GM on September 28, 2015, and promoted to president of baseball operations on September 1st, 2021. He brought manager Scott Servais with him when he was hired, and he inherited more of a veteran roster that he'd still try to compete with initially. So Seattle gave it a shot for a couple years, but after 2018, Dipoto decided it was best to tear this roster down and go all in on a rebuild. So they did that for the next couple years until 2021, when that started to come to an end. Seattle missed the playoffs, but they won 90 games, and we started to see the core that they'd end up going forwards and trying to compete with start to come together here. So this is where we're gonna start to put this team under the microscope, because from 2021 to 2023, we gotta see what Dipoto's vision for a competitive team looks like. At this point, he'd had plenty of time to turn the roster over, build the team how he wants, and put all the pieces together around it. So when we look at Seattle's offense from 2021 to 2023, they were a little below average when it came to scoring runs, but their offense was a bit above average according to WRC+, given that they're hitting in Seattle, and it was an offense that was focused on hitting the long ball and taking their walks when they can, top 10 in the league in both of these. Now obviously these are both good things to be near the top of the league in, but you can't be a good offense with just these two things, and Seattle really wasn't doing anything in between walking or hitting homers. They were basically an entire lineup of 2023 Kyle Schwarber. Usually the big give and take with power hitters is that when you swing that hard, you're gonna swing and miss quite a bit, and that was absolutely true for the Mariners. They had one of the worst batting averages in baseball because they were never hitting singles, and even with the home run hitters that they had, they barely hit any doubles, because it's really hard to get a lot of base hits when you're striking out so much that you're barely ever putting the ball in play. Anytime they got something they could hit, they sold out on the long ball no matter what the count was. Even with 2 strikes, their approach was still to take the walk if it's there, or live and die with trying to go yard. So even though something like WRC+ would say they were actually an above average offense, and I'm a fan of WRC+, okay? Don't get me wrong. If you've been around the channel for a bit, you know I'm a numbers guy.
The statistical analysis. It's so beautiful.
I can't sit here and say this is a good offense, Because it's not balanced at all, it has glaring holes in it and doesn't produce consistently. When you have a lineup that's really only walking or hitting bombs, the only thing you can rely on to score runs is getting that big hit at the perfect time. You need to get a guy or two on base with walks or that rare hit, and then that homer or the right kind of double puts up a crooked number and does big damage for you. But if the stars don't align like that, then you're barely scoring any runs. Because yeah, a walk is nice, you get on base and don't get yourself out by swinging at something you shouldn't, but it takes 4 walks to score 1 run, and a walk's not gonna move anybody up unless there's a force. And a homer is great, obviously, but if no one's on, and 1 solo shot's the only run you score, then your pitching has to be damn near perfect for you to win. So unless the walks and homers go your way and you can put up 3 or more runs like that, you have to manufacture runs with hits and productive outs when you suck at doing that. And in my opinion, it's better to have that offense that takes good at bats and can manufacture runs than getting that multi-run hits just an added bonus. So going into this offseason, the Mariners made it a priority to cut down on the strikeouts and make more contact. So they let outfielder Teoscar Hernandez leave in free agency, and they traded third baseman Eugenio Suarez to Arizona and outfielder Jared Kelenic to Atlanta. These 3 combined for over 550 strikeouts in 2023, and both Hernandez and Suarez struck out over 200 times each. So the Mariners were obviously trying to cut out a bunch of strikeouts by getting rid of these guys, and to replace them they brought in Mitch Garver on a 2-year, $24 million deal to DH, and they traded for infielder Luis Arias from Boston, outfielder first baseman Luke Raley from Tampa Bay, second baseman Jorge Polanco from Minnesota, and brought back outfielder Mitch Haniger after a year in San Francisco. The Mariners turned over half their starting lineup to try to make more contact and have less strikeouts. And I'll admit that at the time, I was probably just too blindly optimistic about this and didn't take the closest look. So let's do that now. And I want to see if these were actually good hitters to bring in, if this was the goal that you were trying to accomplish. Garver's batting average over his career has been a bit above the 2023 league average, but it's been pretty up and down mainly because of injuries. And he's always had a bit of a strikeout problem because even when he's been mostly healthy, he's just a bit above average at making contact. Polanco's had a better average over his career, but it was much higher from 2016 to 19 versus 2021 to 23. He's been pretty good about strikeouts, but this was trending in the wrong direction the last 3 years, and he hit 25.7% last year, and he's been pretty good at making contact over 80% of the time most of his career, until that dropped to around average the last 2 years. Raley's batting average was, well, average last year in basically his first full year, and strikeouts were definitely a problem because this dude's gonna swing and miss a lot. Both Haniger's batting average and strikeouts started to take a dip in 2019 when injuries started piling up on him, because as his body started to break down, he hasn't been able to make nearly as much contact as his career's gone on. And for what we saw of Arias early in his career, his batting average wasn't ever all that good. He could make contact and look like he might be able to be a bit better than average at limiting strikeouts, but it was hard to tell what he was going to be coming off an injury-riddled and just down 2023. So if we look at each of these guys closely, you can make a case against all of them that they're not the kind of hitters that you want to bring in if your goal is to cut down on the whiffs and strikeouts. Now, obviously, it's a lot easier to say all this in hindsight, but Seattle's terrible offense this year doesn't come down to just these guys. When you have a bunch of hitters with the same weakness and an organization that doesn't care about covering up that weakness, the league's gonna take advantage of that. And Seattle's offensive philosophy hasn't changed one bit this year. They've still had their hitters focused on taking their walks and trying to go deep, and they've been good at both of those. But they've also been the worst offense in the league by far at striking out, with over 1,000 Ks by the All-Star break, because they're so overly focused on hitting bombs that they've completely neglected any kind of two-strike approach, situational hitting, or shortening up and just putting the ball in play. Their offense has relied almost entirely on when they can hit homers to score. They're not putting together good at-bats, they're not manufacturing runs, and because of that, it's not only been really inconsistent, it's been been one of the worst in baseball, especially for a team that's trying to compete right now. Even with their walks and homers, the Mariners don't have a lineup that gets hits, gets on base, or scores runs. This is a bad offense across the board, even when you take into account the fact that they're hitting in the worst hitter's park in baseball this year according to Savant. But that's not an excuse for why this lineup's been as bad as it's been. I know it's hard to hit in Seattle, but you have to actually hit the ball first for that to be a problem. And any way you want to slice it, the guys in this lineup just aren't hitting. Going into this year, I would have put the success of this offense on Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, and JP Crawford as the main bats that have been in Seattle, and Mitch Garver and Jorge Polanco to add that boost to the lineup. And none of these guys have been anywhere close to the impact bat that the Mariners needed them to be. I already talked about Julio in that other video. I'll link that at the end if you want to check that out. And what I said in there still holds up now. This dude's way too chase happy at the plate, and pitchers have figured out how to take advantage of this to where he hasn't been able to hit for hardly any power, he's striking out too much, and a good amount of the hits that he's gotten weren't really hit all that well. They just went right to the perfect spot where either no one was there or he could beat it out with his legs. Cal Raleigh's been the one that's pretty much been what you could expect from him. He's not gonna hit for average, and he's gonna strike out a lot, but he takes his walks and he's one of the better power hitting catchers in baseball. His numbers have just been a bit lower across the board so far. Crawford was supposed to be leading off and setting the table for the rest of these guys. He's still walking a lot, but he missed some time earlier this season. His strikeouts have climbed up, and he hasn't hit the ball nearly as well as he did in what looked like his breakout season last year. Garver was really only brought in to add his bat to the lineup, but out of 146 qualified hitters, his OPS is 134th, and he's been hitting so bad that the Mariners have started working him in as the backup catcher, because if you're gonna pay him $12 million and he's not gonna hit, then you're gonna get your money's worth somehow. And Polanco's also missed time this year, but when he's been on the field, he's been downright awful. Out of 215 hitters this year with at least 250 plate appearances, his OPS ranks 206th, and when you look over this lineup, out of the 11 hitters with at least 100 plate appearances on this team, only Josh Rojas has a strikeout percentage better than league average. Cal Raleigh, Dylan Moore, and Luke Raley are the only three with an OPS of at least 700. The highest is Moore's at 721, and they only have 4 guys with at least a 100 WRC plus, and the highest again is Dylan Moore at 109. And you have no idea how much that just killed my soul to say that about Dylan Moore. And again, if this was just a couple guys struggling, or it was a one-year thing, this wouldn't be as big of a concern as it is. But the Mariners have stuck with the same game plan, had the same problems, and it's getting worse, with the team actively making their hitters worse. Julio, Raleigh, Crawford, Garver, Polanco, and France have all seen their strikeout percentage jump up this year, compared to both what they did last year and their career averages, and almost every Mariners hitter is watching most of their numbers drop. This isn't bad luck. This isn't hitting in Seattle. This is across the board an organizational failure to teach hitting and build a lineup. Now I could sit here and bitch about this all day if I really wanted to, don't tempt me. But I'm not gonna just rant about them sucking and be like, figure it out. So I wanna look just a bit deeper to figure out, where do the Mariners go from here to fix this? So let's look at the strikeout and the whiff problem even closer, and I wanna see why this is happening and what can they do to make this problem go away. The first thing, and a good sign, is that this isn't happening because these guys are chasing. They're one of the more patient lineups, and they're not trying to hit a bunch of tough pitches out of the zone. But they don't have nearly that same patience on the first pitch. They're starting a lot of at-bats very aggressive and trying to jump on something, and apparently they're not getting what they're looking for, whether that's the first or any pitch really. Because even though they're not chasing and they're picking and choosing their spots for the most part, these guys can't connect on anything, whether it's in the zone, out of the zone, wherever. So other than maybe being a little too aggressive to start at bats, these guys are just swinging through everything plain and simple. So whatever it is they're looking for up at the plate, they're obviously not getting it, which tells me that the book is out on what to throw these guys. And it's pretty clear that pitchers are staying away from throwing them fastballs, especially sinkers, and instead they're hammering them with breaking balls and changeups. And Mariner hitters haven't been able to adjust to them, especially sliders and changes where they've been bottom 4 in the league at hitting both of these. There's a lot of really smart pitchers, coaches, and front offices across Major League Baseball, so it's pretty telling when everyone seems to be on the same page about how to attack a lineup, and it's working this well. The league has found the Mariners' weakness, and they know how to take advantage of it. So if Seattle wants to really look to compete, and they should, given that they have arguably the best rotation in baseball, that's 4th in innings, 3rd in ERA, 1st in WHIP, and made 21 straight starts, giving up 2 earned runs or less earlier this season. How do they fix this lineup going forwards? Well, let's look at this as simply as we can. The only hits these guys are getting are homers because they're selling out for them. Pitchers are hammering them with off speed instead of the fastballs that they clearly want, and they're swinging right through them and striking out way too much. Did I get that right? Well, a part of this comes from Dipoto in the front office getting a few too many of the same kind of hitters. J-Rod, Raleigh, Garver, Raley, Haniger, Moore, Suarez, Kelenic, Hernandez. You need to have more balance in your lineup so that pitchers can attack everyone the same, and it covers up each guy's individual weaknesses. So that's easy enough, right? Either at the deadline or this offseason, you go out and actually get guys that aren't just power hitting strikeout guys sitting dead red on fastballs 24/7. But that's going to either cost you a lot of prospect capital or take a lot of money that this ownership clearly doesn't want to spend. And plus, I don't think that gets to the root of this problem. When you throw in the fact that guys' strikeout problems have gotten worse in Seattle, the rest of the league clearly has a plan to take advantage of Seattle's approach, and year after year with guys shuffling through the lineup, it's still been the same exact problem. This is an organizational issue. My read of things is that the strategy and game plan this organization wants its hitters to follow is very flawed. And it's one of the issues that, even as an analytics guy myself, I have with blindly following them, because one number can't tell you the whole story. So just because a stat like WRC Plus says that something's good, that doesn't mean that you can forget about either all the other numbers or, more importantly, the baseball that's actually being played on the field. The Mariners obviously value walks and homers, and again, those are both good things, but you can't focus on them so much that you neglect the other parts of hitting. And even if you do get enough walks and hit enough homers for something like WRC Plus to say that you're doing a good job, at best, you have a wildly unbalanced offense and major weaknesses the other team can take advantage of. You can still have your hitters look for pitches to take deep and obviously don't start chasing out of the zone, but you can't just ignore a 2-strike approach or situational hitting to try to hit bombs every single pitch. The better offenses in baseball understand what you need to do in certain situations to score runs. Productive outs and situational hitting can get you more runs consistently than trying to be the hero and coming up completely empty more often than not. I don't know how many times I've watched this offense get a runner or two in scoring position with less than 2 outs and not even put the ball in play, let alone move someone over or drive them in. So for this, there needs to be an overhaul of the organizational philosophy when it comes to hitting. Whoever's setting the strategy for these hitters, whether that's Jerry Dipoto, someone in the front office, the coaching staff, whoever, they either need to move away from this game plan or the team needs to move on from these people. And on top of that, Dipoto and the front office need to focus on getting more well-rounded hitters and a more balanced lineup instead of guys that just do what they're looking for, completely ignore the flaws in their game, and stack up a bunch of the same hitters and tell them all to do the same thing. It's like the guy that's like, every chick I date is crazy. Well, if every girl you date is crazy, maybe the problem here is you, bro. It's me. I'm talking about me. I'm the problem. Something needs to change fast if Seattle wants to keep their playoff hopes and their season alive. Victor Robles, with a career .671 OPS coming into 2024, who they signed after Washington DFA'd him earlier this year, has been their hottest hitter. They already fired their offensive coordinator Brant Brown on May 31st, less than 6 months after hiring him, and surprise, that didn't fix shit. And now it's getting to the point where we're seeing players get the axe too. As I've been working on this, Julio was taken out of the last game against the Astros after crashing into the outfield wall, and JP Crawford was hit in the hand by a pitch, breaking his pinky. Both of them have hit the IL, and first baseman Ty France was placed on irrevocable waivers, all but ending his time with the team. Your star player you committed major money to is underperforming and now hurt. You have everyday guys in this lineup that are actively hurting your chances at winning, and you're giving one of the best rotations in baseball the Felix Hernandez treatment every goddamn day. You need to do something about this. What? Oh my God, Jerry's cooking. Okay, calm down, calm down. We're not gonna make the same mistake again. Let's go on Savant. We're gonna look at the percentile rankings at... Fuck! There's no way this is the only move. I'm gonna hold out hope on that. But let me know what you think about all this. What do the Mariners need to do going forwards to fix this terrible offense? How do they get back on track? Leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. You'd better believe we're gonna talk about this move and all the moves of the trade deadline here after it's done. So if you enjoyed this video, then make sure you like and subscribe to see more videos from us. And for more baseball content like this, you can check out one of the videos on your screen now. Thanks so much for watching and supporting the channel. Hope you have a good one. This deadline's gonna be nuts. Later.